It's March, and we got another market update for you for the Austin real estate market. It's David Shapiro here with my colleague Lee Abraham. Lee, how's everything going?
Everything is fantastic here, David. The weather is nice and excited to get out and look at some property this afternoon.
Got any ping pong matches coming up?
We have been so darn busy, David, that I'm just not getting as much table time as I like or need. So we'll
Yeah,
see. We'll
but
see what happens.
you did make it to the club yesterday, I believe, right?
I was briefly at the club and it was fantastic. And I'm looking forward to having you visit the club so that we can start working on your game as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the ping pong, or do you call it ping pong or table tennis? What's the official name?
I call it ping pong if I'm having fun with my friends. I call it table tennis if I'm competing against some other table tennis athlete.
Okay, so I got the ping pong paddle from you for my birthday, so I am also excited to get up there and play with you.
Absolutely.
So that's good to hear. Yeah, it's been a lot going on here. I think from the average person just looking from the outside in, they're thinking, oh, the real estate market's still slow. Or if they're really behind, they're thinking the market's still hot from 2021 or early 2022. But a lot has changed, and it seems to change, every month or couple of months. And we're really feeling it pick up. The stat in January was, whoa, which we reported a month ago, right? In early February, about January was, whoa, this was the least number of deals that have happened in the city in a single month, probably in over a decade, 2 decades, maybe. I mean, it was just so low. And then here we are in a month where I haven't looked at the stats yet, but just the feeling I'm having now, obviously this is backward looking. So we'll see what the stats show. But the feeling is that it's picking up quite a bit, and across a lot of different price ranges. Right, we've had clients go under contract around 500,000. We've had clients go under contract at 2.7 million. We've got offers out anywhere in between there for clients. We've got listings coming up that are anywhere from high 900s. We have two listings, I think, in the high nines coming, and as you know, up to. By the way, when I say high nines, high 900,000s, but we also have a listing coming up that's 9 million, high nines there.
Right.
So something nearly $10 million coming live on Lake Austin. So there's a variety of activity that's happening, and it really does feel like things are gearing up a lot different than it did just in the fall. The beginning of every year has this kind of feeling. It does feel a little bit different than last year. What are your thoughts, Lee?
Oh, it definitely feels different. I mean, this is a post-election reality with a very new dynamic. So it feels very different. And what I'd say, David, is I think that, our group, the Shapiro group, seems to be outpacing the market. So when we look at the statistics, it's not necessarily reflecting the level of heightened activity that we've benefited from here at the Shapiro group. So that's where, the statistics come in handy. We don't just rely on the anecdotes, but it does feel different. And I believe the market is gaining velocity.
Okay. Well, with that, let's look at the stats. We like anecdotes, but I think stats
Yep.
oftentimes are more helpful. So, all right. So March report, we're kicking it off. And a reminder, you can always find us back here at our YouTube channel. We have been posting these updates monthly for 3 years now. Make sure to subscribe so you get updated. This is really the only place that we're routinely doing updates is here on YouTube. And let's look at the number of active listings. So you can see the seasonality. That is pretty standard with a pretty high peak back here last summer with the number of active listings, came down over the winter and started to come up a little bit here. So if you look back to previous Marches, this is kind of what we would anticipate, just a little bit tick up before we hit the summer.
And so we're starting the month of March with 2,192 active listings. That's a bump from the previous month, as you just pointed out. What we try to do is measure the monthly housing inventory to gauge where the supply and demand is. And it's essentially the number of active listings divided by the number of sales. And we look at the number of sales in a variety of ways. So we can see a significant jump, David, in the 30-day pending. And that is in alignment with our open, where we're talking about the market feeling different. Clearly a big jump. 695 pending sales over the past 30 days. That 518 is a relatively low number that's still reflecting the dampened activity in January, February, post holidays. We're over the 12-month average. That's the key thing to take from these numbers. 673 sales per month closed is the 12-month average. We're above that with the 30-day pending. So things are looking in the direction of increased demand and increased market activity. As far as the housing inventory, we look at the pending sales. Some of those are going to fall out. The effective monthly housing inventory, from my perspective, is just under 4 months. So still technically a seller's market.
Yeah, we'll talk about why we think this is happening. We'll look at mortgage rates, which is a big influence, but there's other factors at play here. So we'll talk a little bit more about those. So here you can see the monthly housing inventory over time. And so you can see it peaked at 5 months of inventory. Now we're down, like Lee said, under 4. And just a quick recap of what this means. This is if every single house that was currently on the market sold. This is, no new listings hit the market. How long would it take for every single house to sell based on the velocity of the market? How many houses are selling every month? So there was 5 months it would take for everything to sell out. We got down here to almost 3 months. You could see going back to early 2022, it was half a month of inventory because things were selling so quickly. There's so little inventory. And so this is just a good way to monitor it because you have two dynamics here. You have inventory supply. You also have demand.
And so these are the specific statistics. The number of closed sales for February, the 518 that we just looked at, that's down year over year, about 15.5%. Up month to month, there's no option given the very low number for January, 436 closed sales. So that had to go up. And we're looking for this to jump somewhat sharply, David, when we're reporting next month for the March statistics.
Yeah. So again, this is one of those lagging indicators. So that makes sense. Average sales price. So up 10% year over year. That's big. Up 5% month over month. And we reported how January was the highest average sale price on record for a January. And remember, we got to look at this seasonally because prices do vary quite a bit month to month based on the season. So that's why we look at it year over year. And so that highest ever, meanwhile, we had one of our lowest ever number of transactions. So kind of interesting to see that. And then here we go in February, highest ever once again with 817,000. So interesting trend. Will that trend hold through to where we get to May, where we have our all-time high price here at 914,000? I don't know. I would be surprised if it did. Lee, what do you think?
It would be surprising, not quite shocking, but I'm just looking at the data that we have, David, and the first time over $800,000 for the month of February, going back in time here in Austin, 2 months in a row that have set the record for their month going back in time. So I don't know how it'll match up compared to the peak, but we'll all be interested to see. It may happen.
Yeah. I mean, good news if you're thinking of selling. So it's hyper local. So reach out to us. Go ahead down in the description. You can contact us there, schedule a call with Lee. But hyper local is what we want to look at and see for your neighborhood if it is a good time to sell. But overall, there's a lot of good things happening for sellers. Talking to some top agents, there's been multiple offers on some of their listings. So if you're thinking of selling, do reach out and we can evaluate if that makes sense for you. So that's good news for sellers for the first time, it seems, in a couple of years where it's been like, oh, I don't know. And we were saying in the fall, like, if you can wait. Right. And so those that have waited have been rewarded thus far. But we'll see if this trend holds through the spring. And then I think the one thing that people keep asking me is like, yeah, well, when are prices going to go down? Like, we got tariffs and we got, all these things happening. And what I always come back to is this graph. So this is macro. And I think one of the easiest ways to look at this, just very simply, this is the number of houses that were built in the US since 1960, roughly. And so you can see it's in thousands of units, and kind of where we were was mostly in this range here, right? Big buildup in 2000 to through the 2008 financial crisis. and the housing crash, right? Builders corrected significantly by saying, you know what? We got burned. We're going to build a lot less houses. But we've never gotten really back to the levels that we needed to be. So if you look at this, in the 60s, we were building this many homes, between 1.2 million and 1.6 million homes. Okay, we didn't even get to that level until like 2017-ish, somewhere in here. And so we didn't build enough homes from 2010 to 2020 to keep up with the rise in our population growth. Like, think about how many people were in the United States in 1960 compared to today. We're talking about, probably 100 million more people or something like that. Yet we weren't building as many homes. So there's just not enough housing stock. And the difference between housing stock and inventory is stock is just the total number of homes that exist. Inventory is, generally speaking, about the ones that are available for sale. So there's just not enough homes out there. And that's the key to trying to understand, like, are prices going to go down? Maybe there's some short-term things that happen that push prices down a little bit, but long-term, prices are going to continue to appreciate because there's just not enough of them.
Right. So we've been watching days to sell because it had been creeping upwards. We see the 82 days for January, and it's backed off a little bit, which is good to see because that's in alignment with our thesis that the market is continuing to strengthen. So yes, it's up a little bit year over year, but it's down month to month. We're looking for this number to continue to drop over the next several months. I don't think it's going to drop radically, but it should continue a downward trend.
Sales price to list price ratio, pretty consistent. Interesting that it's down a little bit year over year. But anything here, Lee, that you would say?
Stable as she gets. So nothing to see here, David.
Number of new listings, Lee, you want to tackle this?
So we're over 1,000 for the month of February, which is great. You can see February of 2024 last year. We were also up over 1,000. We're a little bit down compared to last year, up month over month, and this should continue to rise also. So I made this comment last month, which is that we're really shaping up for a wonderful house shopping and selling season. Demand is up, supply going up, more choices, more options, more buyers, more sellers, and that's good news for everybody in the market. So I'm encouraged by what I see.
One thing I'm noticing here is, now we're 5 years out from 2020. We don't even have any pre-pandemic stats on our 5-year chart. So maybe we got to expand this. Unfortunately, in our system, it doesn't look as good when you go beyond 5 years, but maybe we can figure something out so we can show some 2019 numbers so we can refer to the before times and what the market was like before we started getting into these more volatile changes in the market
Right.
instead of kind of like that 2019 and prior. It's just kind of like steady going. Things would slowly appreciate. And since then, it's just been a whiplash in every direction, trying to figure out what's going on. And, even us being in it all the time, things feels like it's changing month to month. So I think it's important to have somebody that is up to date on what's going on in the market and can guide you appropriately, because if you're still acting based on what was happening in the end of last year, you're going to have a suboptimal experience in your home shopping journey or your home selling journey. So make sure you're working with somebody that is experienced in doing this, not just 1 or 2 times a year, but they're doing it all the time.
All the time.
All right, let's every day.
All the time, every
7
day.
days a week for some of us.
24/7, damn near. The one thing I'd say, David, I hadn't thought about it, but you made a great point. The world is obviously picking up speed with information overload and internet and the media, and everything is so dynamic, immediate gratification from a consumer standpoint. And, it looks like that's the normal these days with the real estate markets, reflecting a broader societal trend of rapid movements in one direction or another. So just kind of a microcosm of the big picture.
Yeah, I mean, real estate changed a lot with the internet and in things like Zillow, where a lot of the information is just available online. Like
Right.
It used to be that real estate agents had books and they're like, okay, let's see what properties I can show you. And the real estate agent was the key to getting access to know what was even available. That's not really the case anymore. In a market like this, the majority of properties are just available online for everybody to see. So our job has shifted. It's not as much about finding the home for the person. Like everybody has access to those on Zillow. There are some instances, luxury clients above a certain price point. We're talking over 2 million. Sometimes it's even higher than that before we really start seeing more private listings. And we're scouring through our network to see, hey, what do you have that's available on Lake Austin that fits this client's needs? But for the majority of buyers, it's all available at their fingertips. And so our job has shifted from being the finder to really we're a broker of the deal, right? That's where our talents lie in helping negotiate, helping make sure we avoid problems and mishaps, having done this for Lee for 40 years and me for, almost 20 years, making sure that we've seen so many different situations and just saying like, okay, we're just going to steer you a little bit this direction because we want to avoid that pothole. And that's where really what somebody's paying for when they're working with a real estate agent, whether it's on the sell side or buy side.
Well said.
Yeah. So lots of changes in the past, changes to come with AI. I'm excited about AI. It's been cool. I've been playing around a lot with it and trying to see how it can be incorporated into real estate. And we're doing some tests with that now. So exciting times. All right, our listing inventory barometers, we found this to be the most accurate way to kind of see what's going on real time in the market and advise sellers, is now the time? Should they wait? Should they move quickly? For buyers as well. So Lee, what are we seeing here?
Well, if you go to the next slide, it's going to highlight the previous week. And so here you can see February 23rd to March 1st. And look at that big jump in new listings, David. There hasn't been 300 plus new listings going back, at least as far as this chart goes. So that's one thing. The second thing is that the pending sales, 193, is also a high mark going back based on this chart. So that's the first dynamic. But if we look at this, it looks like there were more listings at the end of the week than there were at the beginning of the week, 135 to be exact. But now let's click through to the next slide, which is going to show the impact of expired and withdrawn listings. And here you can see that there were 67 expired or withdrawn listings for that week. So instead of 135 more listings at the end of the week, the net result, the growth or retraction, was 68 more listings at the end of the week. So we're still showing the number of new listings, number of sales, because that's really the fresh data in the market. It's just that because we have such a nimble market with what we coined last month is the discretionary seller, they can't get their price, they're going to let it expire, withdraw the listing, puts upward pressure on pricing. We'll continue to report this as it is relevant to our goal, which is what's happening with equity, are prices going up or down based on supply demand. And this is showing us that the supply side numbers are a little bit diluted if you're just looking at pending sales and new listings. Got to take the expireds and withdrawns into account.
Yeah, really great that you added this in the last year or so, because this was not a factor back in 2021 when everything was selling quickly. There were very few listings that were withdrawn or expired. So this only became a thing in the last year, maybe two. Right. So good awareness on you, Lee, to recognize that and start taking that into account. And our updates evolve as the market does to make sure we're keeping you up to date on what's going on here.
For purposes of full transparency, David, not to peel away the veil of mystery as to how we do what we do, but the numbers just weren't adding up, and had to figure out what the heck is going on. And so anyway, it just made sense. So happy to report the numbers and try to gain some insight into why the numbers are where they are.
Great. Yeah. I'm glad that you are curious, and
Still
why we get along. Part of value of each of ours. All right, mortgage rates. I think this is top of mind for a lot of people, big factor into their decision. So, Lee, what are we seeing here?
Well, it's down, over the past week or so, still hovering just under 7%, kind of 2/3 of the way up the chart there in the 52-week range. We don't want to see this rate going over 7%. There's a big psychological impact. It's kind of a barrier to entry, first-time buyers, but most buyers in general, David. So again, nothing really to see here as long as it stays within this range.
Yeah, and I think going back to the factors that are impacting the market and why we think it's picking up, in addition to these rates coming down slightly, although I thought they would have come down more based on what I was hearing about the 10-year treasury, is that you just have this pent up demand of buyers that are in not ideal situations where they've got an extra kid and they're working from home and they just don't have enough space, or they need to move to a different school district because now their kids have gotten older. They've put it off for 2 years, but they're now getting to that point where they can't put it off any longer. And just all these other life things that are happening that people need to be able to move. Maybe it's for a job, right? They were allowed to work remotely, but now all of a sudden their company says you got to come back to the office. And so, it's good for the economy for people to be mobile and not be locked in place, but they feel locked in because of their super low mortgage rates. And so that's why they've been putting off these decisions. But for some of those people, they just can't put it off any longer. They got to bite the bullet. They got to give up their 3% mortgage and go to a 6.5%, 7% mortgage because their lifestyle dictates that. And it's really painful financially for them to feel that way, but they can afford it in many times because that's why they're going ahead and doing that. And, some of those people are keeping their current house because they're like, I just can't give up this mortgage, and they're turning it into a rental if they can. Some people, the majority of people can't do that. And so they're going to sell it. But that's what we're seeing here with the market. And I was doing some research on the percentage of mortgages that are in these low locked in rates. And, it was through AI. So it's hard to say if it was 100% accurate, but, I was actually shocked at what some of the numbers were when you actually look at it. So I asked AI, and here's what it came up with. And this is approximate. It didn't get the math exactly right, but I think this is probably close to give us the sense of what's happening here. So as you can see, we've got a huge chunk of people over here that are under 4% or mortgage free. And then, 25-ish% over here that are above 4% on their mortgage rate. I would say these people currently are kind of like in a middle tier of like, they might feel locked in. They might actually feel comfortable jumping up to the current rates depending on their situation. These people certainly are free to move around, and mortgage free are probably mostly free to move around, right? Because, maybe they're going to be, let's just say they have a $500,000 paid off house. They want to go move to a different area and buy a comparably priced house. Mortgage rates don't impact them. Maybe there's some property tax, things that might have an effect. So there are some things that might keep them wanting to stay in place. And maybe they want to upgrade. They're going to take on a mortgage. But these people are definitely more mobile than these under 4% mortgage people. But if you look at that, so really the lock-in effect is affecting this, roughly 40% of people. And the rest of people have some flexibility. Probably looks a little bit different than it did a year and a half ago as more people start to move from this under 4% or this 4 to 5% category and work up to one of these other two zones. And then they're back into the mobile camp where they don't feel locked in. They can move if they need to again. And so this is going to continue to shift this way. And as rates come down a little bit, more people feel more comfortable making that leap. And, even if rates didn't come down, fast forward a couple of years from now, we're going to have a lot more mobility in the market just because more people have moved themselves from one category to another without the opportunity to get another under 4% mortgage, right? So there's none of those happening right now. So there's nobody being added to this category. They're only adding to these categories over here, or maybe they're, paying off their mortgage and becoming mortgage free. Lee, you got any thoughts on this?
I think it's a good illustration. If I had to guess the percentage of homes that are free and clear, I would have come in under the approximate 40%. So I find that to be interesting. And yeah, this is one of the reasons why we've got limited inventory. Folks don't want to give up that sweet below market rate compared to current rates. So good stuff.
Yeah, I think, that's definitely a stat that I've heard come up before. And it's always shocking how many people don't have a mortgage at all. But lots of people in this country that have lived in their homes for decades and haven't moved. Well, this is where you find us. I think the wrap up here is if you're a buyer, we've got, I guess, three camps. You got buyers, you got sellers, and there's people that are trying to do both, right? And working with the ones that are buying and selling, there's a little bit of a strategy here to try to make sure we manage this process for you and make sure, which do we do first? Do we sell your home? Do we find the new home? And we're tackling that right now with clients actively, and we have strategies to figure that out. So if that's you and you want to talk strategy on that, we can help you do that and figure this out. And then there's the people that are buying. I think there's more inventory is going to be coming online, so there's going to be more stuff coming. As I drive through neighborhoods, I see coming soon signs where I look on MLS, they're not there yet. So people are getting their photos together, they're prepping their homes, just like we're doing with some of our listings. So there's going to be more opportunities. So you don't need to rush into something necessarily as a buyer. Now, if you find the right home, it really fits everything you need, there's no reason to wait. I don't necessarily think that we're going to see a huge change in pricing this year. I think people are waiting for prices to fall out the bottom, but they've been waiting for that for 2.5 years. We got the guy who commented on our YouTube channel, Lee. I had a reminder pop up to check in with him. He said he'd pay us $100,000 2 years ago if the prices did not, what was it? He was basically betting prices would drop 30%, and he was willing to put $100,000 on it. So here we are,
selling the market short. And
yeah. I wouldn't short the Austin real estate market. That is for sure. This is, like these hot tech stocks where you're like, well, is it overvalued or is it just going to keep running because there's something special here? And there's definitely something special in Austin. I mean, I feel it every day when I'm out and about talking to people, and whether it's seeing friends or just talking to randoms out and about. So we got the energy, that vibe in the air with South by coming up. They're setting up. You can see they got the barriers up in certain streets. Like I was on 6th Street, went to a comedy show last night, and they got those barriers up. And so South by is coming, and that's always big for Austin because all these people come into town. The weather's perfect, and the energy is amazing, and people are just like, this place is awesome. What am I doing in blank spot? Like, maybe it's time to make the move. Another thing anecdotally I will say is about a month ago, people were asking like, hey, these fires in California, horrific situation. Are those people starting to move to Austin? Like, are we seeing that? And I can say now that talking to different people and what we've seen is there are some people moving to Austin because of what's going on in Los Angeles. And, for some of them, they weren't directly affected, meaning like their house didn't burn down, but it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and they were ready. You know what? We've been thinking about this. Like, it's time to make the change, and so they're doing that, right? I've heard this from friends and such that have people moving here. So
yeah, one of the couples that I'm working with right now exactly fit that description and demographic. Yeah, interesting times, and Austin continues to be, from my perspective, David, a safe haven and an attractive destination all wrapped into one.
For sure. Yeah. And I think we're getting at that point where if you look at the kind of the projections from 2019, if we just kind of hummed along at our normal rate, where we're kind of getting to that point where we're going to just start humming along again. I mean, the average price stats are kind of, people will be, I think their minds are just shocked. It's mind boggling, I think was the phrase I was going for there. When they see that the average price in Austin is the highest it's ever been for the month of January and then the month of February. So, will that continue? I could see that happening in March. Will it happen again here we go. I can see it happening again in March, right? Then we start to get to April, May, June. It's a little bit harder to set. Actually, March, we had a 2022 high of 864. So we'll see. Maybe we don't exceed that one. But if this continues to increase, it's going to be solid growth.
One thing I can guarantee won't happen is the national media won't be reporting that the February sale price is the highest on record, following the highest sales price on record for January. Doesn't get clicks, David. Doesn't sell ad space. Just good news. What can I tell you?
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that it's the bad headlines that get the clicks. So, which we have, I, for the most part, stayed away from here. Just trying to report what actually is happening. So,
right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. If you got a lot out of this, please share it with a friend. If you want to get updated about future market updates, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and reach out to us. We're available if you want to chat about what's going on in your real estate journey and see how we might be able to support you. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.